Now starting another original tale from Korafika Tales, an exclusive work from our publishing house, narrated by Joanne. Enjoy the story. The wedding stopped. Not because of protests, not because of objections, but because she walked in. The woman he destroyed 5 years ago, holding the hands of 3 children who had his eyes, his mouth, his face. He didn't know they existed. She made sure of that. And now, on the day he was supposed to marry someone else, she's here with the only weapon that could shatter a man who built an empire on control. The truth. What happens when the past you buried comes back? Not to beg, but to burn everything you love? Subscribe to find out. I'm building to 1,000 subscribers, and I need you with me for this journey. The church smelled like imported roses and old lies. Jamin stood at the altar in a custom black suit that cost more than most people's yearly salary. His hands clasped behind his back, his face carved from the same stone that built his empire. 32 years old. Untouchable. Unmarried until today. The woman beside him, delicate, polished, connected to the right families, smiled nervously. She didn't love him. He didn't love her. That wasn't the point. Marriage, for men like Jamin, was strategy. The doors at the back of the church were supposed to stay closed. Security made sure of that. No one entered without clearance. No one disrupted what the Sun family controlled. But then the doors opened. Not with a crash, not with drama, just opened. And she walked in. Amara. The name hit him like a fist he didn't see coming. She wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Not in his city. Not in his world. He'd made sure of that 5 years ago, when he looked her in the eyes and said the words that ended everything. You are the past. She is my present. He'd meant it, or thought he did. But the woman walking down the aisle now wasn't the girl he remembered. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, elegant style. Her dress, midnight blue, tailored, expensive, moved like water over a body that had grown into itself. Her skin glowed under the church lights. Her chin was high. Her shoulders were straight. She didn't look broken. She looked powerful. And she wasn't alone. 3 children walked beside her, small hands gripping hers. 4 years old, maybe 5. 2 boys and a girl. The boy on the left had Jamin's nose. The girl in the middle had his cheekbones. The boy on the right had his exact eyes. The church went silent. Jamin's fiancé turned, confused. His mother stood from the front pew, her face a mask of fury and shock. His underboss, seated in the 3rd row, reached instinctively for the weapon he wasn't carrying. But Jamin didn't move. He couldn't. Because Amara stopped 10 feet from the altar, her children perfectly still beside her, and she looked at him with the kind of calm that only came from someone who had nothing left to lose, or everything left to gain. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said. Her voice was smooth, clear, American accented but laced with something harder now. But I thought you should meet your children before you married someone else. The words landed like bullets. Your children. Jamin's throat closed. His fiancé gasped. His mother's hand flew to her chest. Somewhere in the back, a guest whispered into a phone. But Amara didn't flinch. She crouched down, eye level with the 3 small faces, and whispered something Jamin couldn't hear. The children nodded. Then, one by one, they looked up at him. The boy on the left blinked. The girl in the middle tilted her head. The boy on the right smiled. Small, shy, uncertain. And Jamin felt his entire empire crack, because they weren't just children. They were his. 30 minutes later, the church was empty except for 4 people. Jamin, Amara, his head of security, and his underboss. The children had been taken to a side room by Amara's assistant. A tall, sharp-eyed woman who looked like she could kill someone with a spreadsheet. The fiancé had been escorted out in tears. The guests had been dismissed with apologies and threats, depending on their loyalty. Now it was just them. Jamin stood near the altar, his hands in his pockets, his jaw tight. Amara sat in the front pew, her legs crossed, her expression unreadable. You had 5 years, he said. His voice was low, controlled. The kind of control that came before violence. 5 years to tell me. You had 5 minutes to not destroy me, Amara replied. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. You chose her. You humiliated me in front of your family. You called me the past like I was garbage you were throwing out. That doesn't give you the right to hide my children. Your children? Amara stood, and for the first time, Jamin saw the fire underneath the elegance. You don't get to claim them now, Jamin. You had your chance. You chose power. You chose her. You chose everything except me. I didn't know. You didn't care. Her voice cut through his. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after you ended us. I called you. You sent your underboss to my apartment with an envelope full of money and a message. He's moved on. You should too. Remember that? Jamin's jaw clenched. He did remember. I thought you wanted money, he said quietly. I wanted you, Amara said. But you made it clear I wasn't worth keeping, so I left. I built a life. I raised 3 children on my own, and I became the woman you should have married 5 years ago. And now you're here, Jamin said. At my wedding, with my children. Why? Revenge? Amara smiled. It wasn't kind. No, she said. I'm here because those 3 children deserve to know who their father is before you marry someone else and pretend they don't exist. I'm here because you owe them that much. And if I refuse, then you're exactly the man I thought you were. She picked up her purse, her movements calm, deliberate. And I'll make sure the entire world knows it, including your rivals, including your business partners, including the families who think you're untouchable. You're threatening me. I'm protecting my children. Amara walked toward the door, then paused. You have 48 hours to decide, Jamin. Either you meet them properly, as their father, or you never see them again. And if you choose the latter, I'll make sure your name is buried so deep in scandal that not even your empire can dig it out. She left. The door closed softly behind her. And Jamin stood alone in the church where he was supposed to get married, staring at the altar where his life had just collapsed. Jamin didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse overlooking the city, a glass of whiskey untouched on the table, his mind replaying the moment Amara walked into the church. The children, their faces, their eyes. He'd built an empire on control, on precision, on making sure nothing surprised him. But this was a bomb he never saw coming. By morning, his underboss had the file. It was thick, detailed, the kind of research that came from resources most people couldn't access. Amara Thompson, 30 years old, born in Chicago, graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern, worked in finance for 2 years before disappearing 5 years ago, right after Jamin ended their relationship. Reappeared 3 years later in New York under a new company name, Eclipse Holdings. Jamin's eyes narrowed. Eclipse Holdings wasn't just any company. It was a private equity firm that had quietly acquired stakes in some of the most valuable real estate and tech startups in the country. Market value? Estimated at $2. $3 billion. She wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. And she'd done it without him. She's clean, his underboss said. No criminal ties, no debts, no scandals. She's legitimately self-made. How? Jamin's voice was flat. Investment savvy. High-risk, high-reward plays. She started with $200,000 in seed capital from an anonymous donor. Find out who. We're trying. The donor's identity is buried under shell companies. Could take weeks. Jamin leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. And the children? Triplets. Born 5 years ago. Hospital records confirm she gave birth alone. No father listed. She raised them herself until about 2 years ago, when she hired a full-time nanny and security detail. Security? Private. High-end. Same firm used by CEOs and diplomats. Jamin's jaw tightened. She'd built a fortress. Around herself. Around his children. Set up a meeting, he said. Today. She won't agree. She will. Jamin stood, his voice cold. Because if she wanted revenge, she would have leaked this to the press already. She wants something else. What? Yamin didn't answer, because he didn't know yet. The meeting was set for 2 p.m. at a neutral location, a private room in a 5-star hotel downtown. No weapons, no bodyguards inside the room, just the two of them. Amara arrived exactly on time. She wore a tailored white blouse and black slacks, her hair pulled into a low bun, her makeup minimal but flawless. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a boardroom, which, Jamin realized, she probably had. "You're late," she said. Jamin closed the door behind him. "I'm not. You're 2 minutes late. That's late for someone who prides himself on control." He almost smiled. Almost. "You've done well for yourself," he said, sitting across from her. "Eclipse Holdings. Impressive. Thank you." "How?" "Hard work." Amara folded her hands on the table. "And motivation. Turns out being humiliated by a crime lord is excellent fuel for success." "You didn't just work hard," Jamin said. "You had help. Who gave you the $200,000? "Does it matter?" "Yes." Amara studied him for a long moment, then leaned back. "My father." Jamin blinked. "Your father's dead. He died 2 years after I left Chicago," Amara said quietly. "But before he did, he gave me everything he had left. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start." Jamin's chest tightened. He remembered her father, a proud man. A man who'd looked at Jamin with suspicion and warned him, "If you hurt my daughter, I'll find a way to hurt you back." He'd hurt her. And her father had made sure she survived anyway. "Why didn't you come back sooner?" Jamin asked. "Because I wasn't ready." Amara's voice was steady. "I needed to be strong enough that you couldn't destroy me again. And now I am." "And the children?" "They're not negotiable," Amara said. "If you want to be in their lives, you do it on my terms. You don't control this, Jamin. I do. They're my children." "They're our children," Amara corrected. "And for the first 4 years of their lives, they were mine. You don't get to walk in and claim them just because your DNA matches." "Then what do you want?" Amara pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. "I want you to sign this." Jamin opened it. Inside was a custody agreement, carefully drafted, legally airtight. Shared custody, equal decision-making, financial support, medical decisions, education, and one more clause. The children will not be exposed to any criminal activity, violence, or environments associated with the father's professional life. Jamin's eyes lifted. "You want me to hide who I am?" he said slowly. "I want you to be a father," Amara said. "Not a crime lord. If you can't separate those two things, then you don't get to be in their lives. And if I refuse, then I go public." Amara's voice didn't waver. "I tell the world that Jamin's son, head of the Sun family, abandoned his children. I let every rival, every federal agent, every journalist dig into your life, and I watch your empire crumble. You'd destroy me. Only if you force me to." Jamin stared at her. She wasn't bluffing. "I need time," he said finally. "You have 24 hours. Amara stood. "After that, the deal's off the table, and so am I." She walked out. And for the second time in 2 days, Jamin was left alone, staring at a document that could change everything. Jamin didn't go home that night. He went to the one place no one expected. The park 3 blocks from Amara's apartment. He'd had his people track her. Not aggressively, just enough to know where she lived, where the children went to school, where they spent their weekends. And every Saturday morning, according to the surveillance, Amara took the triplets to this park. So he waited. They arrived at 9 a.m. Amara walked slowly, her hands holding 2 of the children while the third, one of the boys, ran ahead toward the playground. She was dressed casually today. Jeans, a soft sweater, sneakers. Her hair was loose, falling over her shoulders in natural curls. She looked softer, not weak, just human. The children ran to the swings, laughing, calling for her to push them. She smiled, genuinely smiled, and followed. Jamin stayed in the shadows, watching. He'd never seen her like this before. Not in the 2 years they'd been together. She'd always been polished, careful, trying to fit into his world. But here she was just herself. And the children, his children, looked at her like she was the entire world. 20 minutes passed before Amara noticed him. She froze mid-push on the swing, her eyes locking onto his across the playground. The children didn't notice. They were too busy squealing as the swings flew higher. Amara's jaw tightened. She said something to the kids, then walked over, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing here?" she asked quietly. "Watching," Jamin said. "That's called stalking. I wanted to see them." He nodded toward the playground. "See what I missed." Amara's face softened, just slightly. What if your nights didn't end in silence, but inside a love story that understands you? Not rushed, not shallow. A romance told slowly, the way love actually feels. Created for quiet evenings and intimate moments, for those who still crave real emotion. The story continues beyond this moment. Scan the QR code and keep listening. You missed everything, Jamin. First steps, first words, first birthdays. You don't get to show up now and feel sorry for yourself. I'm not asking for pity. Then what are you asking for? A chance. Jamin looked at her. Really looked at her. One conversation. With them, just to. See if I can do this. Amara studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed. 5 minutes, she said. And if they're uncomfortable, you leave. Understood? Understood. She walked back to the playground. The children looked up as she approached, curious. She crouched down, eye level with them, and whispered something Jamin couldn't hear. All 3 heads turned, staring at him. Amara gestured for him to come closer. Jamin walked forward, his hands in his pockets. His heart, which he'd thought stopped feeling things years ago, pounding in his chest. The girl spoke first. "Are you our daddy?" she asked. Her voice was small, sweet, uncertain. Jamin crouched down, matching Amara's position. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am." "Why didn't you come before?" one of the boys asked. "I didn't know about you." Jamin's throat felt tight. "But I'm here now." "Mommy says you're important," the other boy said. "Are you a king?" Jamin almost laughed. "No," he said. "I'm not a king." "Then what are you?" He looked at Amara. She was watching him, her expression carefully neutral. "I'm trying to figure that out," Jamin said. The girl reached out, small fingers brushing his hand. "You have the same eyes as me," she whispered, and something in Jamin broke. He stayed for an hour. The children warmed to him slowly, cautiously, but curiously. They asked him questions, where he lived, what he did, if he liked ice cream. He answered carefully, editing out the parts of his life that didn't belong in a playground conversation. Amara stayed close the entire time, her eyes never leaving them. When the hour ended, she called the children over and said it was time to go. "Can he come with us?" the girl asked. "Not today," Amara said gently. "But maybe another time." The children hugged Jamin, all 3 of them, sudden and simultaneous, and then ran ahead toward the park exit. Amara lingered. "You did well," she said quietly. "I don't know what I'm doing." "None of us do." She looked at him. "But if you're serious about this, Jamin, you need to understand something. They can't know about your world. Not the violence, not the danger, not the power. If you want to be their father, you have to leave that part of yourself at the door. And if I can't, then you're not the man I hoped you could be." Amara started to walk away, then paused. "Sign the agreement, and maybe we can figure this out." She left, and Jamin stood alone in the park, staring at the swings still swaying in the breeze, and realized something terrifying. He wanted this. Not the empire, not the power, not the control. This. Jamin signed the agreement at 3 a.m. He'd read it 17 times. Had his lawyers read it. Had his underboss question whether he was losing his mind. "You're giving her control," his underboss had said. "Over your own children, Over your time. Over your life. She already has it, Jamin had replied. I'm just making it official. Now, sitting in his office with the signed document in front of him, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Vulnerability. He scanned the agreement and sent it to Amara. Her response came 2 minutes later. Tuesday, 4 p.m., my apartment. Come alone. Amara's apartment wasn't what he expected. It was beautiful, spacious, modern, filled with light, but it was also lived in. Toys scattered across the living room floor. Drawings taped to the refrigerator. A small pair of sneakers by the door. This wasn't a showroom. This was a home. Amara opened the door herself, wearing leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun. No makeup. No armor. Just her. They're in the playroom, she said. They know you're coming. Are they nervous? Are you? Jamin didn't answer. Amara smiled faintly. Come on. She led him down a hallway lined with framed photos. Pictures of the children at different ages, laughing, playing, growing. In every single one, Amara was there, holding them, protecting them, loving them. Jamin felt the weight of what he'd missed settle deeper into his chest. The playroom door was open. Inside, the 3 children sat on the floor, building something elaborate out of blocks. They looked up when Jamin entered, their faces lighting up with cautious excitement. Hi, the girl, Mina, Amara had told him, said shyly. Hi, Jamin replied. The boys, Kai and Luca, waved. Mommy says you're going to spend time with us, Kai said. Like, all the time? As much as I can, Jamin said carefully. Do you know how to build a castle? Luca asked, holding up a block. Jamin crouched down. I've built a few things. Let's see what we can do. And just like that, he was on the floor, surrounded by blocks and laughter, and 3 small voices explaining the very important rules of castle construction. Amara watched from the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. 2 hours later, the children were exhausted. Amara tucked them into bed while Jamin waited in the living room, his jacket draped over the back of a chair, his sleeves rolled up. When she returned, she poured 2 glasses of wine and handed him one. You're good with them, she said, sitting on the opposite end of the couch. I don't know what I'm doing. None of us do. Amara took a sip. But you're trying. That's more than I expected. What did you expect? Honestly? She looked at him. I expected you to send lawyers, or money, or nothing at all. I'm not that man anymore. Aren't you? Amara's voice was soft, but there was an edge to it. You're still the head of the Sun family. You still run an empire built on fear and control. What happens when that world collides with this one? I won't let it. You can't promise that. Amara set her glass down. Your world doesn't care about boundaries, Jamin. It doesn't care about custody agreements or good intentions. And the moment your rivals find out about these children, they won't. You don't know that. Jamin leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I've spent the last 10 years building walls around my life, around my family, around everything I control. I can build walls around them too. That's not the same thing, Amara said. These aren't soldiers or assets. They're children, your children, and they deserve more than walls. Then what do they deserve? A father who chooses them. Amara's voice cracked, just slightly. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because they're worth more than everything else. Jamin looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman he'd fallen in love with 5 years ago. The woman he'd destroyed. The woman who'd somehow built herself back up and become something stronger than he ever imagined. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Amara blinked. What? For what I said to you 5 years ago. For choosing power over you. For not. He stopped, his jaw tight. For not being the man you deserved. Amara stared at him, her eyes wide, her breath caught. Then she looked away. It's too late for apologies, Jamin. I know. Then why say it? Because you deserve to hear it. Jamin stood, picking up his jacket. And because I need you to know that I'm not here to take them from you. I'm here to learn how to be what they need. And if that means changing everything about my life, then that's what I'll do. Amara didn't respond. But as Jaemin walked to the door, she called out, "Jaemin." He turned. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she said. "Not to me. And especially not to them." "I won't." He left. And Amara sat alone in the living room, staring at the glass of wine in her hand, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or the best decision. 3 weeks passed. Jaemin showed up every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. On Saturdays, he took the children to the park. On Sundays, they had dinner together, him, Amara, and the triplets, in a routine that felt almost normal. Almost. Because Jaemin's other world didn't stop. His empire didn't pause because he had children now. His enemies didn't care that he was learning how to braid hair or read bedtime stories. And one night, that world came crashing in. It was 11 p.m. when Jaemin's phone rang. His underboss. Urgent. "We have a problem," the man said. "The Kim family knows." Jaemin's blood went cold. "How?" "Someone talked. One of the wedding guests. They've been digging, and now they know about the woman, the children." "Do they have names?" "Not yet, but they will." Jaemin stood, his mind already calculating. Double security on Amara's building. Unmarked vehicles. No one in or out without clearance. Already done. But Jaemin, his underboss, hesitated. The Kims aren't going to let this go. They see this as weakness. And if they think they can use your children against you, they won't get the chance. Jaemin hung up. And for the first time in years, he felt something he'd trained himself never to feel. Fear. Not for himself. For them. He showed up at Amara's apartment 20 minutes later. She opened the door in her pajamas, her eyes immediately narrowing. "It's almost midnight. What? We need to talk." Amara stepped aside, letting him in. "The kids are asleep. What's going on?" Jaemin told her everything. The Kims, the leak, the threat. Amara listened in silence, her face growing paler with every word. When he finished, she sat down heavily on the couch. "I knew this would happen," she whispered. "I won't let them touch you, or the children." "You can't promise that, Jaemin." Amara's voice rose, then dropped again, remembering the children asleep down the hall. "You can't control everything. That's the whole point. Your world is dangerous. And now my children, our children, are part of it. Then let me protect you." "How? By surrounding us with armed guards? By turning our home into a fortress? By making them live in fear?" Amara stood, pacing. "I didn't build this life so they could grow up looking over their shoulders." "Then what do you want me to do?" Amara stopped, turning to face him. "I want you to choose," she said. "Your empire or your children. Because you can't have both. Not anymore." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jaemin stared at her. "You're asking me to walk away from everything I've built. I'm asking you to walk towards something better." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm asking you to be the man I fell in love with. The man who told me once that power wasn't worth anything if you had no one to share it with. I was younger then, naive. You were human." Amara stepped closer. "And you still are. Underneath all the walls and the control and the fear. You're still the man who sat on the floor with 3 children and built a castle out of blocks. You're still the man who apologized to me after 5 years. You're still you." Jaemin's throat tightened. "If I walk away," he said slowly, "the Kims won't just let me go. They'll see it as surrender. They'll come after me. After my family. After everyone I've ever protected." "Then don't walk away," Amara said. "Run." Jaemin blinked. "What?" "Disappear. Take your resources, your money, your people who are loyal to you, not the Empire, and start over. Somewhere safe. Somewhere the Kims can't reach." She paused. "Somewhere we can raise our children without fear. You're asking me to abandon everything. I'm asking you to choose us." Amara's voice broke. Because if you don't, Jaemin, you'll lose us anyway. And this time, you won't get a second chance. Jaemin didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse, staring at the city he'd controlled for a decade, and thought about everything Amara had said. His empire, his legacy, his identity. Could he really walk away from it all? And more importantly, did he want to? The answer came at dawn. He called his underboss. I need you to do something, Jaemin said, and I need you to trust me. What is it? I'm leaving the family. Silence. Then, you're what? I'm stepping down, transferring control, disappearing. Jaemin, you can't. I can, and I will. Jaemin's voice was steady. But I need you to make it look real. Make it look like I've been forced out, like I've lost. The Kims need to believe I'm no longer a threat. And then what? Then I start over. Jaemin looked out at the city one last time. With my family. 6 months later. The house sat on 3 acres of land in Northern California, surrounded by redwood trees and silence and endless sky. It wasn't a fortress. It wasn't a penthouse overlooking a city Jaemin used to control. It was something he'd never had before. A home. White clapboard walls, wide windows that let the morning light pour in like honey. A wraparound porch with rocking chairs. A backyard big enough for 3 children to run wild without ever reaching the edges. Jaemin stood on that porch now, coffee in hand, watching Kai and Luca chase each other through the grass, while Mina built something elaborate in the sandbox. A castle, she'd told him seriously, with towers and a moat. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. Amara stepped out, her hair loose and still damp from the shower, wearing one of his old shirts over jeans. She handed him a second cup of coffee, black, the way he liked it, and leaned against the railing beside him. They're going to track mud everywhere, she said, her voice still soft with sleep. I don't care. She smiled. Liar. Jaemin smiled too, because she was right. 6 months ago, he would have cared. 6 months ago, everything had to be perfect, controlled, in its proper place. But now? Now he watched his daughter pack wet sand into a bucket with dirt-streaked hands, and all he felt was peace. It had been 6 months since Jaemin walked away from the Sun family. 6 months since he'd dismantled his empire piece by piece, transferring control to his underboss with explicit instructions. Make it look like I lost. Make it look like I'm finished. Make it look like the Kims won. The performance had been flawless. Rumors spread through the underground like wildfire. Jaemin's son had been forced out, weakened, humiliated. His rivals had moved in on his territory, carving up what he'd built over a decade. The Kims believed it. So did everyone else. Jaemin's son, the untouchable crime lord, had fallen. But the truth was simpler and harder than anyone knew. He hadn't fallen. He'd chosen. Chosen to liquidate assets quietly, transferring wealth into accounts no one could trace. Chosen to buy this house under a shell company, in a town where no one knew his name. Chosen to enroll the children in a private school under Amara's maiden name. Chosen to become someone new, not a king, not a crime lord. Not even Jaemin's son anymore. Just a man. A father. And every single day he was learning what that meant. The first month had been the hardest. Jaemin barely slept. He kept expecting threats, attacks, retaliation. He'd wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there anymore. Amara would find him on the porch those nights, staring out at the trees like he was searching for enemies in the shadows. They're not coming, she'd say gently, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. You don't know that. I do. She'd sit beside him, her hand finding his. Because you made sure of it. You planned this perfectly. And now, you need to let it go. I don't know how. One day at a time, Amara would whisper. That's all any of us can do. And slowly, painfully slowly, Jaemin learned to breathe again. The second month, something shifted. It started small. Mina asked him to help her with a school project about family trees. Jaemin sat at the kitchen table with her, carefully writing out names and drawing branches, and realized he was creating something he'd never had. Roots. Kai asked him to teach him how to ride a bike. Jamin spent an entire Saturday afternoon running beside his son, holding the bike steady, cheering when Kai finally pedaled on his own. Luca asked him to read bedtime stories. Jamin discovered he was terrible at voices, but Luca didn't care. He just wanted his father there. And Amara? Amara watched all of it with quiet eyes and a softer smile, like she was seeing something she'd hoped for, but never truly believed would happen. One night, after the children were asleep, she found Jamin in the kitchen, washing dishes. "You don't have to do that," she said. "We have a dishwasher." "I know." Jamin rinsed a plate, his movements careful. "But I like it. It's simple." Amara leaned against the counter, studying him. "You're different. Good different or bad different? Just different." She paused. "The man I knew 5 years ago would never wash dishes. The man you knew 5 years ago was an idiot." Amara laughed, really laughed, and Jamin felt something warm settle in his chest. "You're figuring it out," she said softly. "Figuring what out?" "How to be happy." Jamin set the plate down, drying his hands. "I'm trying." "I know." Amara stepped closer. "And it's working." The third month, Jamin started his consulting firm. It was small at first, just him, a laptop, and a rented office in town. He helped businesses navigate complex negotiations, resolve disputes, broker deals. Legitimate work. Honest work. Work that used the skills he'd honed over a decade in the underground, but for something better. His first client was a tech startup trying to avoid a hostile takeover. Jamin analyzed the contracts, identified weaknesses, and structured a defense that saved the company. The CEO shook his hand and said, "You're brilliant. Where did you learn this stuff?" Jamin smiled. "Previous career." He didn't elaborate, and the CEO didn't ask. Word spread. More clients came. Within 3 months, Jamin's firm was generating enough income to support the family comfortably. Not empire money, not crime lord money, but enough. And for the first time in his life, Jamin realized that enough felt like everything. The 4th month, Amara had to travel for work. Eclipse Holdings was expanding into Southeast Asia, and she needed to be in Singapore for a week to close a major deal. "I can cancel," she said, packing her suitcase. "The kids will be fine," Jamin finished. "I've got this." Amara looked at him, uncertain. "Are you sure?" "Amara." Jamin took her hand. "I've negotiated with crime lords. I think I can handle 3 7-year-olds for a week." She laughed. Famous last words. She was right. The first day went smoothly. Jamin got the kids to school on time, picked them up, helped with homework, made dinner. The second day, Mina got sick. Fever, stomach ache, tears. Jamin called Amara in a panic. "What do I do?" he asked. "Check her temperature, give her medicine, lots of fluids, and stay calm." "I don't know how to stay calm when she's crying." "Yes, you do." Amara's voice was gentle. "You're her father. She needs you to be strong." Jamin took a breath. Okay. He hung up, checked Mina's temperature, gave her medicine, sat beside her bed and read stories until she fell asleep, her small hand curled around his. And when she woke up the next morning, fever gone, smiling up at him, Jamin felt something crack open in his chest. Pride, relief, love. By the time Amara came home, the house was still standing. The children were alive and happy, and Jamin had survived his first solo week of fatherhood. Amara walked through the door, dropped her bags, and pulled him into a hug. "You did it," she whispered. "I did," Jamin said, surprised. "I actually did. I'm proud of you." And Jamin, who had commanded hundreds of men, controlled millions of dollars, built an empire on fear, felt his throat tighten at those 4 words. The 5th month, Jamin and Amara started talking. Really talking. Not about the children. Not about logistics or schedules or who was picking up groceries. About them. It started one night after the kids were asleep. They were sitting on the porch, their ritual now, under a sky full of stars. "Can I ask you something?" Jamin said quietly. Always. Why did you come back? He turned to look at her. You could have stayed in New York, built your empire, raised the kids without me. Why did you show up at the wedding? Amara was silent for a long moment. Because they deserved to know you, she said finally. Not the crime lord, not the monster I told myself you were, but you, the man I fell in love with, the man I hoped was still in there somewhere. And if he wasn't, then I would have walked away again. Amara looked at him. But he was. He is. And I needed you to see that too. Jamin's chest tightened. I don't know if I deserve— Stop. Amara put her hand on his. You keep saying that. But Jamin, you've spent 6 months proving you deserve this. You walked away from everything. You learned how to be a father. You built a life from nothing. When are you going to forgive yourself? I don't know if I can. Then let me forgive you. Amara's voice cracked. Because I already have. Jamin stared at her, his heart pounding. You what? I forgave you. Tears slid down her cheeks. Months ago, maybe even at the wedding, when I saw the way you looked at them, like they were the only thing that mattered. They are, Jamin whispered. I know. Amara leaned into him. And so am I, right? Jamin pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. You're everything, he said. You always were. I was just too blind to see it. Amara tilted her head up, her eyes searching his. Then see me now, she whispered. And Jamin kissed her. Soft at first, tentative, like they were rediscovering something they'd lost years ago. Then deeper, desperate, like coming home after being lost for so long. When they pulled apart, Amara was smiling through her tears. I've been waiting for that, she said. For 6 months? For 5 years. Jamin laughed, actually laughed, and kissed her again. The 6th month, they became a family. Not legally, not yet, but in every way that mattered. Jamin moved his things from the guest room into Amara's room. The children didn't question it. They just smiled and said, finally. They started having family dinners every night. No phones, no work. Just the 5 of them around the table, talking about their days. They started weekend traditions. Saturday morning pancakes. Sunday afternoon hikes. Movie nights with popcorn and blankets piled on the couch. And slowly, the house stopped feeling like a place Jamin was hiding. It started feeling like home. Daddy, look. Mina came running up to the porch, pulling Jamin out of his thoughts. She held something cupped carefully in her hands. Jamin crouched down, smiling. What is it? A beetle! She opened her hands, revealing a shiny black beetle crawling across her palm. Isn't he beautiful? Very beautiful, Jamin said seriously. Can I keep him? Beetles like to live outside, Amara said gently, kneeling beside them. But you can visit him anytime you want. Mina considered this with the gravity of a CEO making a major decision, then nodded. Okay, but I'm naming him Carl. Carl the beetle, Jamin repeated. Perfect. Mina ran back to the sandbox, carefully placing Carl in the dirt and building him a house out of twigs. Jamin straightened, his chest tight with emotion. I never thought I'd care about beetles, he said quietly. You care about her, Amara replied, lacing her fingers through his. That's all that matters. That night, after the children were tucked into bed, after stories and kisses and promises to check for monsters, Jamin and Amara sat on the porch under the stars. It had become their place, their time. The world was quiet, peaceful. Everything his old life had never been. Do you regret it? Amara asked, her head resting on his shoulder. Leaving? Jamin thought about it. Honestly, the empire he'd built, the power he'd commanded, the fear he'd wielded like a weapon. No, he said. I thought I would. I thought I'd wake up every day missing it. The control, the influence, the respect. He paused. But I don't. Because for the first time in my life, I have something I actually want to protect. Something that matters more than any empire ever could. The children. You. Jamin turned to look at her, his hand cupping her face. All of you. This life. This. Us. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Jamin. I love you, he said. The words felt foreign on his tongue. He'd said them before, years ago, but they'd been hollow then. Empty. Now they felt like the truest thing he'd ever spoken. I love you, he repeated. I loved you 5 years ago, even when I was too stupid to choose you. And I love you now, not because of the children, not because of guilt or obligation, but because you're the strongest, most incredible woman I've ever known. And I don't want to spend another day without telling you that. Amara was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. I love you too, she whispered. I never stopped. Even when I hated you, even when I told myself I was over you, I never stopped. Jamin kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Then marry me, he said. Amara froze. What? Marry me. Jamin pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. Not because of the kids, not because it makes sense, but because I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I choose you. Every single day. For the rest of my life. Jamin, you don't have to answer now, he said quickly. I know it's fast. I know I don't deserve... Yes. Jamin stopped. What? Yes. Amara laughed through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you. Because you're right. You've spent 6 months proving you choose us. And I choose you too. Jamin pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly he was afraid he might break her. But Amara just laughed and held him back just as fiercely. We're really doing this, she whispered. We really are. The kids are going to lose their minds. Good. Jamin smiled against her hair. Let them. 3 years later. The house had grown with them. There was a treehouse now, built by Jamin and Kai over one very ambitious summer. It had taken 3 months, countless YouTube tutorials, and more wood than Jamin cared to admit. But it stood strong in the backyard, complete with a rope ladder, a lookout deck, and a sign that read, Kai's Fortress, and Luca's too. The sandbox had been replaced by a vegetable garden that Mina tended with the seriousness of a Fortune 500 CEO. She'd researched optimal growing conditions, crop rotation, and pest management. She was 10 now, and terrifying in the best possible way. The driveway held 2 cars, Amara's sensible black SUV and Jamin's sedan that he drove to work every day. His consulting firm had grown. He had a small team now, 5 people, and an office downtown. They specialized in crisis negotiation and conflict resolution, working with everyone from startups to Fortune 500 companies. Legitimate work. Honest work. Work that let him come home every night at 6 p.m. to the people he loved. Inside the house, Amara sat at the kitchen table, reviewing contracts for Eclipse Holdings. The company had doubled in size over the past 3 years. They had offices in New York, Singapore, London, and São Paulo now. But Amara ran most of her operations remotely, refusing to sacrifice family time for business travel. She'd learned that lesson a long time ago. Jamin walked through the door at 6:03 p.m., late by his standards, loosening his tie. Sorry, he said, kissing the top of her head. Client meeting ran long. How'd it go? Closed the deal. They're thrilled. Of course they are. Amara smiled. You're brilliant. I learned from the best. Jamin poured himself a glass of water. How was your day? Finalized the Singapore expansion. We're opening a new office next quarter. Congratulations. He leaned against the counter, studying her. You're incredible, you know that. You tell me every day. Because it's true every day. Amara stood, crossing to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. The kids want to show you something, she said. Another beetle? Worse, a frog. Jamin groaned dramatically, and Amara laughed, the sound filling the kitchen like music. They walked hand in hand to the backyard, where 3 children, now 10 years old, growing too fast, their faces losing baby softness and gaining sharper angles, were crouched around a bucket. Daddy, look, Luca shouted, pointing into the bucket. Jamin crouched beside them, pretending to be fascinated by the small frog swimming in circles. Where'd you find him? He asked. By the pond, Kai said. Can we keep him? Frogs need ponds to survive, Amara explained gently. But we can visit him there. We could build a pond, Mina said, ever the problem solver. Jamien looked at Amara. Amara looked at Jamien. They both sighed. I'll get the shovels, Jamien said. The children cheered. Later that night, after the children were asleep, and the plans for a backyard pond had been sketched out on graph paper, Jamien and Amara sat on the porch. Their place. Their time. The stars were bright tonight. The air was cool and clean. Jamien pulled Amara closer, wrapping a blanket around both of them. We're building a pond, he said. We're building a pond, Amara agreed. For a frog. For 3 children who love a frog. Jamien laughed. How did this become my life? You chose it, Amara said simply. Remember? Best choice I ever made. Amara tilted her head up, kissing his jaw. No regrets? Not a single one. And he meant it. Because Jamien had spent 10 years building an empire, commanding respect through fear, wielding power like a weapon. But this was his greatest achievement. Not power, not control, not wealth. Love. A woman who challenged him. 3 children who adored him. A home filled with laughter and chaos and vegetables and frogs. A life worth living. And as he sat there under the stars, Amara in his arms, the sound of crickets singing in the darkness, Jamien realized something profound. He had finally become the man he was always meant to be. Not a king. Not a crime lord. Just a man who loved his family. And that was more than enough. It was everything. The end. What if tonight ended with a story that actually fills you? Instead of silence or endless scrolling. A deep, emotional love story. Real connection. Real feelings. The kind of story that lingers in your heart long after it ends. Created for quiet nights, headphones on. For those who still believe love should feel real. Scan the QR code and start tonight.